Now, the success of the first generation Niro, specifically the electrified version, was quite a surprise. Why? Well, predominantly the most successful EVs are built on bespoke EV platforms, and that e-Niro, that was just an electrified version of the regular crossover in the Kia range. The formula though was successful, and it's one that Kia have stuck to with this second generation Niro. The second generation Kia Niro comes as a full EV, which is what we're looking at today, but it also comes as a petrol hybrid, both a mild hybrid and a plug-in hybrid. Where this second generation does vary to the first generation is not the battery technology. You'll find that in terms of range and battery, it's very, very similar to the first gen. But in terms of overall quality and the interior, well, the second generation really is a giant leap forward. So if you are in the market for a used EV that can do family duties, you may well be looking at one of these cars. So today we're going to take a dive into what it's like to drive, what the interior is like. We'll look at the range and the battery and let you know which one you should be looking at if you are after a used EV.
As mentioned, the Kia e-Niro was a huge success for the Korean car maker, with the electric version of its popular Niro crossover becoming the second best-selling car in the UK at one point. Given the success, it was no surprise that the second generation Niro was also offered in pure electric form. While the Kia Niro EV stats are very similar to those of its predecessor, big improvements were made in terms of its design, onboard tech, ride comfort and practicality. Now, the exterior of the Niro EV has hints of the Sportage, while the interior bears a striking resemblance to Kia's flagship electric car, the EV6. Every Niro EV comes very well equipped. As standard, it gets 17-inch alloy wheels, rear parking sensors, a reversing camera, smart cruise control, a 10.25-inch digital driver's display, and central touchscreen of the same size with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity. If you upgrade to 3 trim, you get front parking sensors, LED headlights, wireless smartphone charging, heated front seats and steering wheel, vehicle-to-device charging capability, and a blind spot warning system. Top of the range 4 trim adds ventilated front seats and heated rear seats, as well as a 10-inch head-up display, a sunroof, a powered tailgate, and even vegan leather upholstery should you require it. There's also the option of a heat pump to more efficiently heat the car in colder months, preserving as much of the car's range as possible. However, this heat pump is only available on range topping 4 trim levels, but it's definitely worth looking out for on the used market.
As mentioned, the second generation Kia Niro really is a step up in terms of interior quality. It is a very nice place to be. Everything feels very well put together. There are lots of nice soft touch materials. There is a little bit of piano black plastic down here, which is going to get a little bit grubby with fingerprints, but other than that, there are no complaints about the interior. You've got a nice digital display, both in the center and in front of the steering wheel. And you've got a feature that I do really like that you'll find in a lot of Kias, which is the controls down here. So whilst they are touchscreen, you can toggle between media controls and climate controls, and you do still have a couple of physical controls to adjust temperature and volume and things like that. It's a very practical place to be. So we have a charging pad down here. We've got a 12-volt socket. We've got a USB and a USB-C. You've got heated seats, heated steering wheel. You've even got cooled seats. There really is anything that you could want. Cup holder down here and some additional storage beneath the armrest. The seats are very comfortable. They're nicely sculpted actually. You get quite a bit of support around your body. In the back of the Niro EV, well, I only have one complaint, to be honest, and that complaint is that it is a little dark back here. So we've got the sunroof in the front, but that doesn't really bring a lot of light into the back of the car. So it is a relatively dark place to be. But other than that, things are really quite good. I am just under 6'2", and I have got a surprising amount of space. The seat is in my driver position, and I've got plenty of room for my knees. My feet are fine. I can also sit up straight without bumping my head on the roof of the car. The seats themselves are nice and comfortable, and because we are in the 4 trim, we actually have heated seats back here as well. Connectivity is good. You've actually got USB-C ports within the 2 seats in front of you, so really easy to plug devices in. We've got a nice flat floor, so if you have got somebody in the middle, there's no transmission tunnel, so everybody can fit their feet comfortably. If you pull the armrest down, we've got a couple of cup holders in there, and also ISOFIX points on both sides that are really quite accessible, and the doors open nice and wide as well. So if you're putting the child seats in and utilising those ISOFIX points, it shouldn't be difficult. The Kia Niro is obviously a very family friendly vehicle, so it will have been put through family life. So if you're going to look at a Niro, it's worth checking to make sure that everything works. So for example, these charging ports in the back here, connect a device, make sure that they charge, make sure that there's no scuffs and scrapes around the back. You may have had kids potentially kicking the seat, so check the condition of the seats in front. Let's take a look at the boot of the Niro. In terms of outright literage, you've got 475 litres of space here. When you have the floor at its highest height, you've got a nice flat loading area, hardly any loading lip at all, and just a big rectangular, easy to use space. There's not a lot of features, so you don't have any lashing points. There isn't a 12-volt socket back here, for example, but there is space beneath the floor to store charging cables and plenty of other things as well. You can also lower this floor to have even more space, but that does create more of a load lip and it prevents the floor from being completely flat. Now, driving the Kia Niro EV is pretty much what you would expect from any crossover. It's not dynamic, it's not made to be dynamic, but it is comfortable. The steering's very, very light. I think it's very well suited to town driving, so if you are going to be doing lots of shorter journeys, maybe the school run, you've got a short commute, nip into the shops, the car really is ideally suited for those kind of journeys. Being an EV, it's obviously quiet, so there's no engine noise, and that means that you do get more road and wind noise coming into the cabin, and you're also more likely to hear those bumps and rattles and squeaks. Now, this is a used Niro, it's done 50,000 miles, and I can tell you there are no squeaks and rattles coming into the cabin at all. You do not hear anything. It's a very quiet, civilized place to be as you're driving along. Thanks to the cameras on board and the parking sensors and that light steering, parking should not be an issue in the Niro. It's not a particularly large car, so you won't have any problems with parallel parking or parking in multi-storey car parks. It's very, very manoeuvrable. With regards to battery and range, well, there's refreshingly a very simple battery lineup. It's just one powertrain, one battery, 65 kilowatt hours. That is it. In the first generation Kia e-Niro, you had 2 options for powertrains. There was a larger battery and a smaller battery. In this second generation, it's just that 65 kilowatt hour battery, and maximum range is projected to be 285 miles. Once again, this is a used EV, and the general rule of thumb for judging battery capacity in a used EV is to take 2% off of the battery capacity for every year of the vehicle's life. This is a 1.5-year-old car, so you'd expect it to have 97% capacity, and it's actually been tested, the battery on this car, and it is at 97%. That figure of 285 miles range, well, that is pretty much the same as the first generation. There wasn't really any giant leaps, as I mentioned, in terms of battery tech and range. And while we would have liked potentially to see a car that could do 300 miles, it is still very, very competitive in terms of the segment that it occupies. Where the Kia Niro EV is not so competitive is charging. It doesn't have a particularly high charging speed compared to rivals, although you will find that when rapid charging, you should be able to get from 10 to 80% in around 45 minutes. So as with most modern EVs, you should find that the car can well easily do over 200 miles, so around 3 hours worth of driving in one sitting, and therefore you should probably run out of steam before the car does. So you can quite easily stop, take 20 minutes to have a comfort break, grab a drink, and then charge the car for 20-25 minutes and get back on your way. One other thing to mention about the Kia Niro EV that sets it apart from its competitors is the regen braking. Now, all EVs have some form of regen braking so that you can do 1 foot driving, but not a lot of EVs give you the choice over that regen that you get in the Niro. So you've got paddles behind the gear stick, meaning that you can go up and down in terms of how strong you want that regen to be. So you can have it at its lowest setting, so you can lift and coast, and it feels very much like driving a petrol or diesel engine vehicle, or you can have the regen at its highest setting, which means taking your foot off the pedal and the car slowing right down. Personally, I like to have it at the lowest setting. I find that, I just like to have more of an experience that's similar to a petrol or diesel engine. And so if you're like me and that is what you want, then you really can achieve that sensation in the Niro. The Kia Niro EV second generation is, well, a great family car. It's comfortable, it's practical, there's a surprising amount of space, and it's also economical to run and buy. Sure, it doesn't have the most range and it doesn't have the biggest battery compared to some of its rivals, but the technology is tried and tested, and it's more than enough for most people in day-to-day life. So if you are looking at a used EV for the family, we would heartily recommend this car. And in terms of which trim level to go for, well, that's just going to come down to how much tech and toys you really want. All Niros are very well equipped, so it's just going to be a personal choice. Thanks for watching this used car review of the Kia Niro. If you enjoyed the video, then please give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you are notified every time we release a video, and let us know in the comments below, what do you think of this car? Is this the EV family car for you, or would you be considering something else?